Two, one. There it is. All right, ladies and gents, and everybody else, we are going to have a lot of fun here today. We have someone who is going to get into the depths of your humanity. Ready to rock and roll? Because I sure am. Let's have some fun.
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
All right. Welcome to the show. Before we jump into our content, I just really quickly want to ask everybody who's watching or listening one more time, or, again and again, to please head on over to YouTube, do a quick search for Practicing Polyamory Podcast, and then hit that subscribe button. I really want to get to 100 subscribers. As of last night, when I last looked, we were at 35. So getting there a third of the way there. We've got February is a short month, so 11 days left. So if y'all can help me out, I would really appreciate it. And if you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch at Practicing Polya, would really appreciate that as well. And again, another petition, another call out to my BIPOC LGBTQA QIA plus community. If that's you and you are also polyamorous, I definitely want to hear your story. Would love to chat with you and get your perspective on the ways of the world and things that are going on. So if that's you, please reach out. Would love to talk to you. All right. Otherwise, let's hear about our guest. Our guest today has been practicing polyamory for the past 4 years, and she's learned a great deal about the humanity of relationships. Now, one of the things that I personally love about polyamory is the way that I'm more able to more deeply connect with people, and that's something that our guest seems to have discovered on an even deeper level. She believes that communicating with one's existence, with their being and their humanity, is a vastly important lesson that she can take into all relationships, not just romantic ones, and this approach to relationships can benefit all of those involved. So let's see how deep into this discussion we can get with our amazing guest. Welcome to the show, Faith.
Hello.
Haha, party time. You ready? And there it is.
Did it go?
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we might have a little bit of things going on here, but we're gonna, roll with it and have some fun. So, Faith, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Practicing polyamory for 4 years. When did you first hear about polyamory? How did you get introduced to it?
I think one of my recently really good friends at that time, her friend and her boyfriend were trying to open up their relationship just because they were having some struggles that they thought that it could kind of help. And it came up to us one day, and I was like, this sounds, awesome. I love people and never really liked the concept of having to limit interactions and where they could go just because you're, committed in a monogamous relationship. So I went and I asked my husband if it would be something he'd be interested in reading about, learning about, and he wasn't so sure necessarily, but he was a little thrown at first. But after talking a lot through it and explaining kind of where I was coming from, I think he was a little probably blindsided at first, but we've always just talked about everything. So that was awesome to have a partner that was willing to talk to me about something that a lot of people would, I think, shut down very, very early on.
Absolutely.
And
how long did that conversation last? How long did you and your husband talk about it before it actually became a thing?
I think what happened is we had always been kind of open to, some people might say, because we always had an agreement that, if you were going out to a club or something with friends and you want to dance and someone wants to dance with you, you could, do that, and you could talk to them a little bit. We smoke. So we're like, if you're smoking at the smoke pit, you can, talk and make friends. But anything past that, we would always been no emotional anything else.
No kissing,
so I don't think
none of that stuff.
none of that. And then I went to a club one night with one of my friends and ended up meeting this guy who was just really, really nice. And we had a really good connection. And I went to my husband that night and I was like, hey, I know we've always said that we should put this like block on it, but, I think that, what our friends were talking about might actually be something I'm interested in because I really do think that this is a really cool person. And I told him, like I could just be friends with them, but I feel a deeper connection that I would like to pursue if that's something we could talk about. And that first conversation probably lasted for a few hours. We like no bars hold, just all in, like whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, don't hold back. Like tell me what
Nice.
you're thinking. And it was really
Safe
good.
place, safe conversation.
Very safe. I think that's really important, just to feel like whatever you want to say, that you can say it. Because as soon as you start not saying things to any type of partner, even a friend, I
Mhm.
think,
Mhm.
just distrust kind of comes in. Because then you mention something in
Yeah.
passing months later, like, oh, I've been thinking about that. And like, well, why didn't you tell me? So I'm just kind of like an open book at this point. I'm just like, I don't like to ever not say anything, just open book.
Yeah, I love that. Authenticity is my superpower. That's the name of my future unwritten book. But
I love
I think
that.
we're kindred spirits in that sense. So one difference that I'm hearing and kind of
Mhm.
presuming here is your friends that originally told you about polyam versus when you brought the conversation to your husband. You said they weren't in a good place and they were kind of trying to fix things. You and your
Yeah.
husband were in a good place. It wasn't
Yeah.
about trying to fix anything. It was just, hey, this is an idea.
Yeah.
Um, what is your experience just in that instance, right? I mean, it's just roll with it.
Yeah.
What's your opinions on just that opening up because we want to solve something?
Well, for those people, that couple, they are not currently in a romantic relationship. Um, and they didn't actually end up pursuing non-monogamy for very long. It just for them brought up more issues as opposed to helping anything. Um, and I don't necessarily think that it um, opening up any relationship to solve a problem. I don't think that's necessarily not going to work, but at least in the relationships I've observed and on groups online and everything that I've kind of like been a fly on the wall, just watching of like and listening what people have talked about their experiences. I think the issue comes in with more communication. Like there's a problem and you're trying to fix it, but then somewhere the communication still isn't quite lining up on one side or the other. So you're trying to fix something, but the main key, which is communication, if you don't put that into non-monogamy, I don't think it works.
60% of the time, it works every time.
We were both thinking one of those clips was gonna work. But you and your husband, you did not have that issue. You guys came into it from a place of just open, honest communication. And then one of the things that I mentioned in your intro was
Mhm.
connecting to someone's existence, to their being. What exactly does that mean to you?
Well, for me, it's realizing that no matter who the person is, it could be somebody walking down the street, I just pass, or as close as possible, my husband. They're just their own person. Like they're their own being. They are living their own life. And whether or not I pass you on the street and I'm in it for a split second, or I'm married to you and I'm in it for X amount of time, you're still living your own existence. And I feel like a lot of people get very caught up in their ego. So when they even hear that their partner might be attracted to someone else, they're like, well, what does that mean about me? Like, what does that
Hmm.
say about me? But like, it's often not about you, like it's at the end of the day, a lot of things just aren't about us pertaining to other people's lives, like my
Right.
things are about me, but my husband's emotions and stuff, like that's all about him. So when you, I think, can really accept that someone else has their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own struggles, their own life path, you're a little bit able, not detached, but to take yourself out of the scenario and just respect and acknowledge that they are their own existence, their own person. And it takes a lot of pressure off of, I think, you as well. Like, oh, like I don't have to be perfect all the time because you're your own person. Like what I do doesn't necessarily even affect that. I'll try and act my best and as ethical as I can, but like you're living your own life and your emotions are yours to own. I can't dictate
Mhm.
that. I can't be mad at you for feeling something. I can ask questions, I can try and understand it. But if I'm coming from it from an egotistical point of view, I'm never going to understand it.
Right.
Not really.
Yeah, the way that I learned it, the way that I apply it to my relationships is I say that I you are responsible for your happiness and I'm responsible for my happiness. So it kind of takes that
Mhm.
pressure of, I have to do certain things in the relationship to make you or keep you happy. Of
Mhm.
course I want to make you happy in the relationship,
Yeah.
the that's kind of the point of, being in a relationship is to make.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
Oh, there it goes. That was weird. That was an extended black screen. Um, Not sure what happened there, but anyway, what was I saying? Oh, the responsibility of emotions. It's not on you to be responsible for your partner's happiness, and it's not on your partner to be responsible for your happiness either. So, all right, kind of switching gears here a little bit. I wrote down these three
Mhm.
words over the weekend, and I want to talk to you about what these three words mean to you and to your perception, your approach, and everything revolving or surrounding polyamory. So the three words that I wrote down were morality, acceptance, and validation. So starting with morality, what do you say to someone who comes to you and says, well, you're living a life that's immoral? What do you say to somebody that has that perception of polyamory? And I hope that you're not too frozen. Are you back? Are you
She
back?
says nothing.
She says freeze.
She says Elsa.
Oh man. All right. Well, morality. I guess I'll jump in then. I'll talk about what I think of morality and while we wait for faith. So this is definitely like an issue, especially for those of us who have been raised maybe in religious families, conservative families, anything along those lines. It's a tangent, right? It's a shift from societal norms. And so I think that the issue of morality is based on, whatever the foundation is. So if your foundation is coming from a place of religion, Christianity specifically, right? We always hear the one man, one woman. So to anybody, you know, that's coming from that perspective, it doesn't matter if it's polyamory or heterosexuality or, anything along those lines, it's always going to be immoral. And welcome back, Faith.
Sorry, my husband's playing video games and I think it's just too much on the internet. So I just ran to be like, hey, can you give me 15 minutes? I heard morality
Agreements,
and
agreements.
acceptance.
Morality, acceptance, and validation. So let's start with morality. And I was just kind of throwing that out there from my own opinions. What are your thoughts if somebody were to tell you, well, what you're doing is immoral? What would you say to somebody like that?
Actually, I got into a 2-hour conversation with some gentlemen that I passed on the road at this park the other day. Turns out they were there to convert me to Christianity. I found out a couple minutes into the conversation, um, and they said something about commandments or something, and I said, well, I'm polyamorous, so that doesn't really like resonate with me. And they were like, oh, so you're an adulterer. And I was like, okay, well, let's get to the root of that word. Why don't we, like, what does adultery mean? And at first they were like, well, it means to be faithful. And I said, okay, what does it mean to be faithful? And they were like, went into it all. And I was like, well, that's doesn't seem what to apply to me then. Like, what do you, so, and they like, oh, well, let me rechange it. Let me say it just means you don't have sex with someone you're not in a relationship, like only with that one person. And I was like, okay, but why? And they were like, well, that's just because what God says, or, whatever. And I said, okay,
Mhm.
but isn't there usually a purpose for those things being told to us? Like that's kind of talked about with the Bible specifically. A lot of the stuff has a reason for it being spoken. And so I was like, what is the reasoning behind that? Like if I don't want to have sex with people because, STDs or something, I can protect myself from that now. Like in today's day and age, we know more about that. I was like, so, and if my husband is happy, if I'm happy, if we're communicating and we're not lying to each other, we're not putting the other person in danger because we're always being honest, whatever it is, like, where's the problem? And they just really give me an answer. And that's kind of what I've encountered along the way with everyone.
Wah,
I,
wah.
we have these very worldview into, but when you get down into asking why, oh, did we get?
No, we're back. We're
So
back.
we have like these really rigid ideas. I think that we try. Cool. Okay. So I think there's these really rigid like framing that we try and put the world into. But when you ask questions about like the why of it, people don't really have any answers. And I've always thought that's kind of funny because I'm like, you're going to tell me I'm immoral, but you can't really tell me why. And I think it's just really funny because as long as I'm acting as ethically and as true to myself, all taking in my partner, I think there's any more that anybody can really do.
Yeah, you're kind of cutting in and out, but that's okay. So one of the things that you touched on, one of the things that you said is, that they can't pinpoint the why. And, I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit. The why, you said it earlier in what you were saying. The why is because this is what the Bible says, right? This is what the
Yeah.
book says. This is what, the religion says. But as far, beyond that, I tend to agree with you. There's not anything other than that book saying that it's an
Mm-hmm.
immoral thing. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things in that book to me that people pick and choose which parts of it they want to follow and which parts of it are okay. And even in that book, there are times when maybe not polyamory, but at least polygamy is like perfectly
Mm-hmm.
acceptable, perfectly normal, perfectly healthy, and like encouraged.
Yeah.
So it's hard to justify that as the basis. So
Yeah.
moving on to acceptance. Do you see society as ever do you think that society will ever accept polyamory as just a normal thing that people do? Do you think that we're headed in that direction at all?
I mean, I think society has been there before, in history, different cultures did not have the same association with relationships and sex in a monogamous way that we do. So I think if we have been there before as in humanity, I think we can always get there again. Now, how far off that is from like in American society getting there, I'm not
Mhm.
quite sure. Especially because I think a lot of the representation of non-monogamy in media and such is kind of one-sided. To be like all movies and media, it's supposed to be dramatic and to get people to
Mhm.
watch it. But because of that, then the only representation I think right now is very dramatic and very not ethical because that's what gets likes and views and things like
Right.
that, unfortunately.
Do you know if do you know of any representation in the media that actually stands out to you as good representation?
Ah, I've There's a few things that I've seen here and there, but like mainstream, I don't really think so. It's hard because I mean, even within groups and stuff through media that polyamorous people I think congregate in to get ideas. There's still a lot of not like lining up in certain like understanding about like the best ways to be ethical and the best ways to take self responsibility. Because like what you were saying earlier, like I make myself happy, you make yourself happy. My mom viewed that and was like, oh my gosh, you're gonna like abuse someone that way. And I'm like, well, no, because like if I'm worried about my happiness and they're worried about their happiness, there's no chance for abuse because the other person can like take responsibility and walk away at any point too. Like there's no
Right.
manipulation. So I really don't think that there is yet, unfortunately. I think there's some that get maybe closer. But I don't think there's really too many. What was that one show?
There was one
I
thing
can't
that
remember
you
the
mentioned.
name.
Yeah, you mentioned that as we're growing as a community, polyamorous people are starting to recognize each other. We're getting into these different groups on Facebook and in local communities wherever. And I think one of the things that you kind of touched on is that we disagree on certain things, or we can't
Yeah.
quite come to a consensus on certain things. Like one person's definition of relationship anarchy is different from another's, and
Yeah.
one person over here, one group of people over here thinks that hierarchical polyamory is just foundationally bad, whereas this other group is like, no, well, I was married and this person is like the most important person in my life, and everybody else kind of takes a back seat, if you will.
Backseat.
Again, in quotations, okay, not exactly what I mean, but there is that hierarchy, and they want that to be acceptable too. So what are some things that you see in the community that we're kind of back and forth on here, that maybe if we could come together on?
Well, I think that one that you just said was one that I see a lot, about the hierarchy.
Mhm.
And the one explanation that I've seen, I think that kind of found that middle ground, was that it's still like I think I was saying in the little thing I wrote, that if you acknowledge other people as their own people, there's so much less, I think, opportunity for abuse and things and unethical practices. So like with the hierarchy, if I'm married and I have kids and I open my relationship, that has a hierarchy to it because your husband and your kids, or your wife and your kids, or your whatever, are there, and then you have your partner that comes in. They came in second, so they're people are like, well, they're secondary. But I think if you acknowledge them as a human that's important and existing within their own right outside of your relationship with them, then you want to act ethically. They're not just like a toy, to play with. They're a person. So I think if you can acknowledge that the hierarchy might be in, what's the word I'm looking for? Like day-to-day practice, like
Mhm.
with your husband, you have a house to run. Like there's, I'm going to
Mhm.
say
Mhm.
more societal obligations, or agreed upon obligations that you've already had when you've entered into that other relationship. So then having a new relationship, you still have to fulfill those obligations, or change them, but they're still there. So you can't just say
Right.
that, your husband, it doesn't matter anymore, because you still have those obligations. But you shouldn't also say this new person coming in is just, willy-nilly. They're here until I let them go, or they're here until
Right.
I slam the door in their face because my husband and my kids are more important. I think if you can just accept that other people need to be emotionally cared for and thought about, just like you want other, kind of the golden rule, do unto others like you'd want done unto
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to come into a relationship with a newly open couple and then, 6 months later they slam the door in my face because, one of the partners can't handle it or whatever it is. So I would never want to do that to someone else either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is definitely something that early on people exploring polyamory do tend to get into that. I mean, I did it myself, right? When I opened up my relationship, it was because I started seeing this girl, but of course I was married, and so I was like, well,
Yeah.
this always comes first, and you're sorry, she doesn't like you, so we're breaking up. Oh, actually she's okay with you, so we can get back together. Oh, actually she really doesn't like you, so we're breaking up again. And I
On the break!
it was horrible on my part, right? And
Mhm.
I hurt this girl, multiple times over. And these are the things that people early on opening up the relationships tend to fall into. And so, to your point,
Yeah.
it's really important that we remember that these are people with feelings, and we got to take that stuff into consideration, and treat it like glass, right?
Mhm.
Treat people like they matter. So
Yeah, because they do, like why
absolutely.
bring someone into your life if you don't think they matter? Like
Hmm.
it's always really interesting to me when I see people that, kind of toss partners away like nothing. I'm like, you just brought someone into your life because you supposedly cared about them. So, show them you care. And no one's perfect, like
Right.
no one. But we can all try more, just try a little better next time.
Just do a
Just
little
try
bit
and
better.
do better
That's
next time. And that's all that we can ask of each other. I think, like there was definitely times when I did not act ethically with my husband, or vice
Mhm.
versa, but it was all about setting that new spot. Like we didn't act okay in the past, that's in the past. Now we're going to know that, let's communicate and do better in the future. And then you just keep going. And you can't bring up those things either. I
Yeah.
can't bring up to him, or vice versa. We just, tomorrow's a new day.
Tomorrow's a new day. So we talk about these struggles. We talk about these painful experiences that we've had. These times where we mess up, and we weren't ethical, and we hurt our partner or partners. We did all these things. To you, what makes it worth it? Why go through all of that to continue to live a polyamorous life?
I think for me it's the fact that I just love people. Like I've just always been a people person, and I don't think it necessarily is worth it for some people. I think,
Hmm.
and that's valid too. Like
Yeah.
if somebody tries it and they can ethically exit the relationship, if that, just like anything, I mean, you have to end relationships usually at some point. So as long as you're doing it in the best way. But I think it's just about trying to navigate it all. Because wait, say your question one more
So
time.
the question was, what makes it worth it?
Yes. And so for me, it's like I love people. So every interaction for me is so amazing. Even just a passing interaction on the street, like hi, bye. Like I love them. So when I meet someone that I really, really connect with, um, if I feel any type of romantic inclination towards them, I would just really be sad about having to stifle that, because there's so many experiences you get from, I think, romantic partners that you don't necessarily get from friendships.
Mhm.
And they're all amazing in their own right and all valid in their own right. But I think for me, limiting romantic relationships specifically would just not give me the life that I want, like all the opportunities and
I'm
adventures.
gonna throw a
There's so
curveball
many
at you here.
adventures.
I'm gonna throw a
Yes.
curveball at you here because, okay, cool, you're polyamorous,
Mhm.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a great connection with somebody and it's a
Mhm.
romantic connection and everything, that you can just pursue it. Because what if they're in a relationship, and they're supposedly monogamous? What if they're willing to, kind of put their monogamy aside and be like, okay, well, that's
Mhm.
cool, because
Dude, I almost had you.
right? We'll just kind of do this thing on the side. What do you think on that?
So like they're not like telling their
They're in a
partner, is that?
relationship. They're not going to tell their partner. Yeah.
I don't do that. I think that people should. I think that people should be able to take responsibility for themselves. So like I know some people kind of make the argument that like, well, like it's their choice to cheat or not. It's not my choice. Um, but if for me, if you're cheating on someone, like if you're lying to your other partner, you're not a good person in my opinion. So I don't want to be in a relationship with you, because what changes that from how you're going to treat me? You know, like I still want my partners to act ethically and above par, in my opinion, than most of the people I meet. So it's like, if you're not already doing that with a current partner because you're going to lie to them to try and be with me, I don't want to be with you. You know, it's just no.
So
No
let's
want.
take that a step further. Let's say
Mhm.
you have a partner and they have a partner, right?
Mhm.
So your partner's partner, your meta, is
Meta, yeah.
is cheating on someone that they're seeing, and your partner is not willing to step up and say this is not right. Like, how do you feel about your partner when
So
their
them kind of
partner is,
allowing it.
yeah.
So they're kind of acting like unethically, in my opinion. But does that change my relationship with that person? I think it honestly would depend on the partner.
Mhm.
And I think the situation surrounding it, like if their meta happens to be like in an abusive relationship and there's a lot of like mental stuff there that they really don't feel like they can leave that relationship. So they're cheating because they feel like they can't leave, then I could kind of understand that a little bit. Because for me, I think mental manipulation kind of falls in its own category for a lot of things,
Mhm.
because I
Mhm.
don't think it allows the mind to make its own choices truly. Um, so in those cases, I would be understanding. And if it was completely like, you know, this person has like a great other partner and they're just like posting online or something, like buying them this and taking them here, and I know that then after they take them there, they're going and, you know, that's a hard one. I really do feel like it would depend on the partner, because it's like if you like pet puppies and feed the homeless, but you're allowing your mate to cheat, maybe you're, I don't know. That's hard.
That's a tough one, isn't it?
And it comes up a lot from what
It
I've seen.
does.
Like
Yes.
people, I don't think that you should get involved. I don't think you should like tell your partner how they should feel, but I think you can let them know how it changes your view of them. You
Mhm.
know, like if my husband was, you know, in a relationship and that person had been cheating, you know, I would let him know that it's making me question his character a little bit, because, and you know, I'd let him know, like, you know, we've always talked about cheating as something we don't endorse, but now you're kind of endorsing it. Like, can you explain that line of thought to me? My husband would probably get annoyed because I make him logic everything out. So he would probably get to the end of it and be like, "Oh crap, you're right. Like
Damn it.
maybe I should walk away." But like if he wasn't going to, then it would be on me, you know, take responsibility for myself to decide to walk away or not.
Right.
And I think that depends a lot upon, you know, how long you've been together with someone, if you have, you know, those other obligations we've talked about, if
Mhm.
you have kids, and all of that plays into it. But I think the main thing is you still can't like be mad at your partner. You can't like choose to stay with them and then make backhanded comments once a week of like, oh yeah, you know, you let her cheat, so it's whatever. You know, you can't like be passive aggressive because you're choosing to stay with them. Like, you're making that choice too. So accept that they're allowing it or you leave. So
Very well
that
said.
kind of sounds
Very well
harsh,
said. But you know, it's a reality that a lot of people, especially, you know, in our community, we have to deal with it because we talk so openly, we communicate so openly about these things that are going on with our other partners. And if
Mhm.
that situation comes up, it's like you said, it's, you know, well, that changes my view of that person that I'm with, you
Yeah,
know,
because I
and
entered
sometimes it can be,
into this, like I entered into this under different terms, essentially, you know, like we're in a relationship with my understanding of like who you are. And if you suddenly show me something completely outside of that, I'm not gonna just say okie dokie pokey and continue on.
yep, yep. I 100% agree with that.
You can't handle the truth.
Sometimes they can't handle it. Faith, it's been a real pleasure chatting with you. I want to thank you so much
Oh,
for spending
same.
some time with us here, giving us your perspective on everything. We didn't quite get to, you know, everything. Like I said,
I know, my dang internet.
It's all good. It's all good. It happens. We took over. We jumped in. We just chatted a little bit, and you got right back in
Cool.
here. And say thank you to your husband for pausing his video games for us, so that we could chat here.
I'm
And
sure he thought it was so hard.
and just thank you again for hanging out with us and giving us your viewpoint. Really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. This is great. I don't get to like talk to many people within the poly community face to face very often. So this is awesome.
Well, welcome
you.
back anytime. And for anybody else
definitely.
who's listening, if you want to be a guest on the show, would love to have you on and chat with you, learn from you. This is a community learning and growing together. That's all that this show is about. So if you want to come on the show, go to www.practicingpolyamory.com. Don't forget, if you are tuning in today live, you get no commercial interruptions, but the same cannot be said for the podcast download. So if you want to avoid commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us Monday through Wednesday at 2:30 Pacific time, or sign up for our Patreon, where you'll not only get access to our commercial-free RSS feed, but also some Patreon-only content like reaction videos and Q&A with our upcoming professional guests. So once again, thanks for hanging out with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me, follow us at Practicing Poly. Head over to YouTube, do that search for Practicing Polyamory Podcast, and subscribe so that I can get to that 100 before the end of the month. And pretty much that's all we got for everybody today. Thank you once again, Faith.
Thank you. That was a mouthful. Props to you for getting through all of that.
Been doing this for a little bit.
Good at something, never do it for free.
Boom, there it is. All right, everybody. For the rest of you, thank you all as always.
Have a nice day!
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website or by subscribing at